Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eric Hulkran. I am the Director of Social Media and Brand Strategy for cleveland.com, The Plain Dealer, and Advance Ohio. And welcome to Navigating Finances. We have an absolutely amazing program for you today, filled with knowledgeable speakers, expert panel discussions, Q&A, and then those special expert panel discussions after the event itself. We're going to have a Q&A after each one of the panels. So as you see your Q&A box, as those panels show up, make sure you get your questions in there, and I will start running through those as each panel is completed. Now, before we get started, I want to give a big thanks to our gold sponsor, Chestnut Hill Realty Incorporated, Liberty Home Mortgage Corporation, PNC, and the J.L. Smith Group. And of course, a big thank you to our supporting sponsor, CHN Housing Capital, Morgan Stanley, and Weltman. Thank you to each and every one of you for making today possible. Now, before we get going, I'd like to turn it over to our moderator of today's panel discussions, Rich Exner. Rich writes, That's Rich, the personal finance column that appears on cleveland.com. The column focuses on simplifying complex financial issues to make decision-making easier for everyone reading it. He also writes about data on all topics: taxes, weather, sports, home sale, and Rich joined the Plain Dealer in 1991. It is my absolute honor to welcome to the stage Rich Exner. Rich?
Thanks a lot, Eric. It looks like we got a heck of a program today. Lots of great experts to hear from. Good opportunity for our viewers to ask some questions in the chat during. And as you point out afterwards, just in looking over our program today, we've got everything here from getting your financial house in order to getting ready to buy your first house. So I'm excited to hear from the experts, hear what the audience has to say. So I think it's time to get it started.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you for jumping in. We will come back to you in a few. Now, let's get going. I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker, Brandon Krastelski. He is on a mission to change the face of reentry in the United States. In 2007, he founded Edwins Leadership and Restaurant Institute with the belief that education wins and that every human being, regardless of their past, has a right to a fair and equal future. Under Chrostowski's stewardship, Edwins has grown to include a culinary education and life skills training at its flagship French eatery, a butcher shop, a bakery, a diner, a nearby Second Chance Life Skills Center campus for additional learning, housing, and support services, and an on-site program at Grafton's Correctional Institute and curriculum for inmates at all Ohio state prisons. It's my honor to welcome Brandon Chrostowski. The event we're obviously talking about is Navigating Finances. But before we get to that, I kind of want to talk about business first and then kind of swirl around into finances. And in one of your last interviews before the pandemic, you had just scaled the business up. You had the bakery and the butcher shop. And obviously, restaurants have been pounded by this. And I'm just wondering, how have you guys navigated through this? What has this been like for you personally? And where are you guys at as we're in 2021?
Yeah. I mean, look, at COVID's it's been a lift. You know what I mean? You just gotta work twice as hard to maintain any sort of equalness that you did the year prior, right? It's been a grind. It's been a grind, but a couple of things couldn't happen. You couldn't surrender to fear, right? You couldn't be afraid of the boogeyman or what was going on. You just had to kind of keep your head buried, work hard, be safe, be smart. And, with that, it really paid dividends. Business at the butcher shop at the peak of COVID, it doubled. We were slinging so much meat and, like condiments and like others. Just like toiletries, you name it. We were doing it all. The 4 for $40, it was really quick. If I found out very quickly what it is that people would really want, and that was comfort. They wanted comfort, they wanted security, they didn't want to pay too much for it because there was so much unknown. And then just kind of stacked all these businesses on top of each other, butcher, baker, and the restaurant, and did these 4 meals for $40. And we did more revenue in 2020 than 2019 for a lot of months. The whole year over year, we didn't net as much, but we certainly kept people employed, hired more people, and expanded what we.
That I really want to ask you, because in all of the interviews and podcasts I've seen that you've done, I don't think anyone's actually asked you this question, maybe in a roundabout way, but I want to ask about your teaching, because it seems like when you're in front of a camera and you're able to teach people things, your already magnetic personality sort of triples in size. And I want to know, when did you figure out that teaching was one of those things that would light you up? What was that like?
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think I've been asked that before. Teaching is, I mean, education is what, got me out of a tight spot. And a small amount of time or a large amount of time that a chef has ever spent with me, it's helped me grow as a person. So I know what that knowledge can do for someone's, soul. I know what it can do for their mind, their confidence, and just, I guess all those feelings that are inside when someone teaches or has taught me, it needs to be, reciprocated and shown to when you teach others.
The event is called Navigating Finances. And I know a lot of people, when they approach their finances, would love this idea of a map. But Brandon, when you talk a lot about what you've done in the universe you've built, you talk about a compass, which I think gives you a lot more latitude, both in life and in finances, to navigate through when things go bad. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between a map and a compass, especially maybe when it comes to finances for your business?
Breaking it down in terms of finances, I could just say philosophically, like I've just either you buy into this culture or you don't, and that culture is, you put excellence forward, right, and you put, mission forward. Everything else will follow. Like I didn't even talk about money. I didn't even talk about like whatever visibility. But if you put a great product forward and you put a great mission forward, everything else will eventually follow, right? And that's kind of like been the sense with having a compass or a map. I mean, we know what we have to hit for a bottom line in order to sustain this, right? And it's somewhat of a moving target, right? If you are a little less busy, then you have a little less people working, and so you can still net, right, the amount that you need to survive. So plus or minus those little nuances, there's a lot of fixed costs that we know what we need to hit, and now it's just about jockeying that those funds in the bank account in a way that's never desperate or never sloppy, but always putting forth the mission and it's the level of excellence, and the money always follows right when you need to have it most, and that's the best thing I can say about the actual map. The compass is, I mean, for example, like COVID, it was really simple. The day after the governor shut us down, March 15th, got the staff together and said, we're going to fight for three things, and we're going to get through this, and we're going to fight for, one, making sure we're all healthy and employed. Two, we're gonna feed our community, and the third thing is we're gonna spread this mission of reentry. And not one person wavered. I didn't have dissension and have this or that. We just all jumped right in, and it was great because what we were fighting for. And when you know what you're fighting for, you can kind of dig in a little harder and move in a direction collectively. So I think that compass has to always be there in terms of what are you fighting for, and how is that team on board with fighting for it.
You are what I would as a servant leader, somebody who is building a community, giving back to that community. And one of the things, if you look at your trajectory, it seems very much that your success and your giving run in tandem, right? When you're giving back to the community, Edwin starts to grow, and vice versa. So as we're talking about financing and re-understanding our finances, can you talk about that giving spirit, that servant leadership, and how that helps grow a business? Because I think for some people that might be counterintuitive, right? If I'm going to navigate my finances, I need to keep all the stuff. That's how I'm going to grow my world, where you have taken a very different approach to that, where it's give back. You just ran through them, right? Give back to the community, re-entry, and all of that sort of stuff. And your universe has expanded. Can you talk about that?
It's not just one thing. It's not just like one, point or one, move or one moment. It's really a way of life, right? It's a way of life. And if you start to lay down the track work this way, you build this ecosystem where what you just said, in fact, works, and it works all the time. Ever think about that. It's like ever in any restaurant in the last like 15 years, 20 years, we never advertise. Just keep doing good, keep doing excellence, and the money always comes back around.
Thank you so much for the time. Have an amazing day, and we'll talk again soon. Always a pleasure to hear for a couple minutes from Brandon. And today we have with us Drew Martin and Walter Morris with us to discuss planning and developing financial freedom in our very first panel today. Drew Martin is Executive Vice President and Market Manager for the Northern Ohio Retail Branch team at PNC. Drew joined PNC through its acquisition of National City Corporation in December of 2008. Since joining the organization, he's served in a variety of capacities, including branch manager, regional manager, sales and service manager, and his present role as market manager of Northern Ohio. Walter Morris is a financial services manager for Community Financial Centers. Walter provides solid knowledge on how you can improve your life by planning and managing your money in the best way that suits your individual situation. Walter has over 20 years of experience in banking and finance. His experience is accredited as a financial counselor, and that allows him to identify underlying issues in a person's life that are much larger than an overdrawn bank account or a subprime credit score. Drew, Walter, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Eric. We've got a great topic for our first panel discussion here today. How do you reach financial freedom? Based on what I've heard from readers over the years, there's a lot of questions about that and a lot of interest on the topic. To discuss that, from PNC Bank, we have the market manager for the retail branch team in Northern Ohio, Drew Martin. Thanks for joining us, Drew.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Rich.
Also on board today from the Community Financial Centers is our financial manager, Walter Morris. Thanks, Walter.
Oh, thank you for having me, Rich.
So before we get started, a couple housekeeping matters. Just a reminder that after we have our discussion here, there's going to be a Q&A opportunity. You can go ahead and toss your questions into the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can in a short period of time. But also later today at 6 o'clock, there's going to be an opportunity where you can kind of pick your topic, 5 different topics. Experts are available for much more detailed information on all the topics we're going over today. So let's get started, though. We're back to the topic of reaching financial freedom. Drew, when you hear that term, reaching financial freedom, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, well, thanks, Rich. And I think just the very need for a question like that highlights the importance of a forum like this. So if it's all right, I just really want to start by thanking cleveland.com, the Plain Dealer in Advance, Ohio, for allowing us an opportunity to discuss important matters like this. You know, financial freedom is a complicated topic, and I think it's interesting, Rich, that if you put the word freedom behind so many other themes or topics, the answer would probably be pretty obvious, right? But for some reason, when we talk about financial things, they get a little harder. I think with the topic of financial freedom, one of the primary reasons it's maybe a little more complicated is that it's so individualized. From person to person and time of life, what financial freedom represents is really different. You know, for some, it may mean moving out of their parents' house without having to have a roommate. It may mean buying their first car or purchasing their first home. Many, it means being able to send their kids to college without the burden of debt on those kids. And for others, retiring with dignity and honor. Financial freedom is so individualized, and that's why it's important that we have forums like this and that people have conversations and planning so that they can figure out what their own version of financial freedom looks like and start working to achieving that. And that's what I'm excited to be able to talk about with you and anyone listening here today.
Okay, Walter, I think most of our viewers know what PNC is. We see these bank branches everywhere, but community financial centers might not be as familiar to everyone. So can you tell us how you fit into this discussion, what you do, and so forth?
Sure, thanks, Rich. Community Financial Centers offers convenient, high quality, and affordable one-on-one financial coaching where it's tailored to the client's aspirations. It's a service and not a program because we focus on the client. And it's affordable. We offer affordable banking products, tools, and services, financial education, and budgeting instruction for management of debt or to improve your credit. Even we help people who are looking to change careers or tax preparation, educational opportunities, and we allow the client to plan their future and move towards financial stability, not only in the immediate circumstances, but long-term.
So this is a broad question, but where should people put their focus? And maybe that answer is different for different people, but how do you kind of deal with that question? Where should I put my focus?
Well,
Drew? I'm sorry, go ahead, Walter.
Thank you. Sorry about that. What I tell my clients is to focus on yourself, and that's difficult to do. We wear a lot of hats as parents, employees, significant others, but allow your happiness to be your compass. Determine what's truly important to you and keep asking why until you find that root source. If you want to purchase a home, ask why is moving to a new community important, and keep asking yourself why. And that allows you to focus on all of your goals and pretty much spread them out like a bunch of Legos, so that you can piece things together in a holistic way and and have a complete life plan.
So Drew, when somebody shows up at PNC to talk to you or your team, how's that approach with them when they come through the door? Do you try to figure out what their focus is and walk them through it, or do they oftentimes come in with a clear focus and say, I don't know how they're going to get there?
Yeah, our focus is always on the individual client. Like we just talked about, financial freedom is individualized, and therefore the aspirations and the goals of our clients differ from person to person. But just like Walter said, there's many things you can do and concentrate and focus on, even though it's individualized. And I think a couple of the things I'd point out is that it's important that individuals do something. Come talk to someone, find a way to figure out what your financial freedom looks like, and then begin taking steps and actions towards it. And that can be as simple as concentrating on day-to-day things, day-to-day expenses, and figuring out how those match or don't match. One of the things I like that Walter just said is find your own joy. I think if we all took an audit or an inventory of the things in our life that really cause us that joy, they'd rarely be things we spend money on, right? And so I think it's important to understand what's motivating you to make purchases that may be impulsive, and making sure that you have a plan there. And then finally, figure out what that long-term financial freedom looks like for you, and then have a plan to kind of reverse engineer it and figure out how you cause it, how you bring that to life for yourself. And that's what we seek to do each and every day here at PNC Bank, is we talk to clients that either know exactly what that looks like or don't yet have it exactly figured out. We want to be there to engage in a conversation on their needs and their future and make sure we can help them craft a plan that gets them to where they want to be.
Walter, do you get people sometimes that can't even see what that future is because they're buried in the current? And if so, how do you get them through that current so they can see that picture down the road while they're dealing with whatever is going on financially right now?
We absolutely do. And that's one of the great parts of community financial centers, because we use a coaching and a counseling approach. And counseling is where you deal with things that are more traumatic, that may have happened in the past and could be still going on, where they can't even see a financial future for themselves. And having a background in social work helps, which many of our counselors do also. We are focused on the finances, but there can be other things that have happened or are still happening in a person's life that could be playing a huge role on their finances. So we don't skip over that. We really take that into account, and we work with them through that. Some financial coaching can take 6 months. So I have clients that I've been working with for 6 years, and we are there with them every step of the way to really sort through those things so that they can start dreaming and believing again and forgiving themselves for some of the financial mistakes that they may have made in the past.
So right out of the gate, are there like 1 or 2 or 3 things that you feel like are very common for you to offer that person when they come in? Or is it just too individualized?
It's very individualized, but as we were speaking about, what I tell people is to make sure that you include yourself in the plan, because it's your plan, it's your life. Sometimes people are thinking about everyone else in the family, children, spouses and things like that. But so I say start that, kind of center yourself in the plan, and then we go from there. But it's always very individualized.
Drew, same for you. Are there certain things that seem to be common for the type of people that would come into your place for help? Or is
Needs vary. Like you just heard from Walter, every client's individualized, every community member that may need help is individualized. And we want to really be grounded in what's individually important, but we have a framework we use in the conversation. And so we want to help that client think through what's important to them, think through day-to-day money management, long-term, short-term savings plans, and really craft a plan. But I think overarching, we want our clients to like Walter said, give themselves some grace, be reasonable, and to focus on making goals that are attainable and allowing themselves to really kind of be attached to those things, so that that plan doesn't feel maybe miserable or challenging to achieve, but rather very possible. And so I think being reasonable and being disciplined are two things that help anyone. So while individual responses and individual financial freedom is highly individualized, being reasonable in a financial plan are tried and true. Things like being disciplined, Rich, as I think about the simplest of things, paying yourself first. Those, being disciplined in the way you save, maybe set up to a savings account. So you're truly paying yourself first. So while the needs, approaches, and tactics may be individualized, there's some tried and true principles that allow our clients and those we work with to hopefully achieve their own version of financial. So individualized, but there are some baseline things I think everyone could do.
I've always found it interesting that banks are involved in this, because I think a lot of people might think of the bank as they want you to deposit your money there so they can lend the money and make some money on loans and so forth. But why is it important for a bank like PNC to offer these type of services?
Well, the conversation we have with a client is critical, and so we are proud to be a part of the community, but then also to help enrich our clients' financial lives and help them to achieve financial freedom. So, Rich, the conversations like these and the conversations we have day-to-day one-on-one with clients are really critical, because we know we're at our best when we're helping clients solve both their short-term needs, but also think long-term. And the way that we as a bank can interact with that client may vary depending on the stage, but there's a place for us all along that journey. And we're really proud to be able to partner with clients on that journey to achieve their own version of financial freedom.
So Walter, you told us a little bit how you fit in, can you discuss a little bit more about the services that you're able to provide and the way your organization is set up, and where else people might, maybe it's not a fit for you, but maybe there's another place that you go. Could you kind of speak to the array of places to go get help on this type of thing?
Sure. The first thing with our service is we conduct what's called a financial health assessment, and that's the first place I think that a person should start, because in that assessment, it allows you to look at your expenses, look at your income, and see what your financial health is. Similar to if a person is going to a gym or something like that, or just simply a doctor's appointment. Your doctor's going to ask you, what are you eating right? Are you exercising, and things like that. So the financial health assessment allows us to take the client through those steps to see if they are even thinking about the right behaviors, or if they know the right behaviors when it comes to their finances. Sometimes our service may not be a fit, because we are, and I say this in a great way, we're pretty entry level in what we do as far as our finances, but we don't stop there. And what I mean by that is someone may have more advanced needs beyond our scope, as far as investments and or insurance and things like that. We're not licensed to do that, so we have a team of people that we work with who can help through our local banks and other organizations. So that's my biggest advice, is develop a team of people that you can consult with and talk with about your financial health. Community Financial Centers is a great start. Make a good relationship with your local bankers, get to know them, and find those other resources. And we can help provide those as well.
Are there fees for these services at all, or free, or a combination thereof?
Community Financial Centers is a free service right now, and that's including your credit report, all three bureaus with the analysis, and all of our financial coaching services. If we refer out, then it's at cost to the referral service, but anything related to financial services with community financial services for community financial centers is free.
And Drew, how about at PNC? Is there a fee to come in for this advice, or does it just depend on what level of advice you're getting? Or
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to talk to clients and have these kind of conversations to help them navigate their own version of financial freedom, and there's no cost for that. Obviously, various products and services could have costs or fees, but certainly the conversation we have is something that's paramount and core to who we are as a bank, and that's complimentary.
I guess the best time to begin this type of planning is as soon as possible. But I also guess you're never going to probably tell somebody it's too late. But could you speak about the benefits of doing it earlier in life and later if you happen to get to it then?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. And I think one of the most important things is to do, like I talked about earlier, Rich. I think, jumping in and doing, looking at day to day, even if that involves small dollar amounts, is critical. And then also being able to kind of reverse engineer that long-term financial freedom goals that you might have. But it's powerful to start today because it's just a kind of simple calculation. The earlier you start on some of these things, the more powerful your ability to save is. And I will also say it's really important to take ground wherever you find yourself on this journey. So wherever you find yourself, look at what that future financial freedom looks like to you and begin a path to reverse engineer that to change what that future state will look like. And that's why it's important to start here, now, today, as you hear this, because it can start with small dollars and small plans, small dreams, small goals. But we really want our clients and the community at large to be thinking through today, yes, but also what that financial freedom for them looks like out on the curve, and to make plans and to build a plan that allows them to achieve that. So starting today is paramount.
Well, Walter, when you start early, I mean, is that as soon as they get their first job, or I mean, I don't want to discourage anybody from doing it wherever they are in life, but I mean, again, to the benefits of the earlier the better. Does that get into your advice a little bit?
It does, and one way that we stress that is many of the viewers here today may have children. And we tell people to make a family plan, make financial coaching, financial planning, make it a family effort. You have children and you think that they may not understand or want to discuss finances, but if there's something that they want and you can't provide it for them, beyond just telling them no, explain to them, financially the breakdown of why that can't happen right now, and see if they can help you develop a plan to maybe do that in the future. It's a great holistic family outcome, and it's something that our children, as we are learning, are much smarter than we think, and sometimes they can have some great financial solutions to things that we may not even think about. So start with them early, and anyone who is just starting out in work can participate in our financial coaching, or even if you just do something as simple as have a parent or guardian help you manage your money. That goes a long way, and those are skills that you can have for the rest of your life.
It's been a great start to our conversation today on this. We're going to get to the Q&A here in a little bit, but before we move there, what didn't I ask I should have, or what did you like to add that I didn't ask about, Drew, or either of you?
Yeah, Rich, I think we covered a lot of ground, quite frankly, but I would just tell the viewers out there to, I talked about starting here, starting today. You might be asking, where can I get help? So you're saying start now, start today. I'd point you to a number of places. And, I'm really PNC for a whole lot of reasons, and I'll talk about a few of those. But, one of the many reasons I'm proud is because of our offering in the community. We have our Fairfax Connection, which is located at East 83rd Street and Carnegie Avenue, provides a variety of financial literacy and workforce development, along with a myriad of other terrific offerings. It's a free community service and community place where people can go to learn more, to dive into some of these topics we're talking about today. But then also, we'd welcome you at any of our PNC Bank locations. We have a variety of services and products that we think help our clients gain control. Perhaps in the near term, you'll hear or see more about low cash mode, which is an offering that I think you'll see advertised, and we're really proud of it. It allows our virtual wallet clients to have more control over their day-to-day finances. We all find ourselves at times in low cash moments, and this offering will really position our clients to have control over their finances, to make decisions on whether or not to pay certain things, and then ultimately to be able to fund their account and get extra time to do so. So there's a number of offerings. It's just something I would want to add that we're really proud of our Fairfax Connection. We'd invite anyone to go out, find it, visit it, to learn more. But then also stop in at your local PNC Bank branch where we can have this conversation we've been talking about and talk to you about some of the services and products that can help you achieve financial freedom.
Walter, anything you'd like to add before we get to the Q&A?
Small businesses. A lot of people don't are aspiring or current entrepreneurs may not know how much personal finance really affects your business down the road. But when you're starting out a business, the business doesn't have any credit, so it's important to have that personal credit in place, and in order to start acquiring and building business credit. So we work with a lot of entrepreneurs throughout Northeast Ohio who are looking to start a business or have been in business for some time and are looking to acquire assets for their business. So I welcome them and stress the importance to them of acquiring some advice through financial coaching.
So we will bring Rich up as well as our guests to do the Q&A here in just a second. Drew, welcome.
Good to be with you, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Rich, welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome in, my friend.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Rich, I will toss this over to you. You can get this started.
Okay. One of the questions came up from our viewers there in the chat, and I think it's a good question because it really goes to ground one of this, Drew. You mentioned more than once paying yourself first. I guess the viewer would like to dig in a little bit deeper. What do we really mean on paying yourself first?
Well, Rich, I'm glad we're asking the question. I really think it's a basic pillar of financial management. And we talked earlier about a couple of tips to help people reach financial freedom. And in that, we said, be reasonable and be disciplined, right? And I think the pay yourself first concept really hits at the core of both of those. And so I'm going to talk about it from that perspective. First of all, we'll start with the second one, be disciplined. Pay yourself first is just a concept where as you get paid, depending on what kind of role you're in, if that's weekly, bi-weekly, once a month, or you get paid as you complete jobs or tasks. You want to be in a position where you're immediately paying yourself. That means putting money in savings. And so it can be any amount that's based on your own budget. And that's where it ties to the first point, which is be reasonable. Pay yourself first works. You're just setting aside a portion of your gross income right away so that it's saved, right? And so the first thing you're doing before you're paying bills or other discretionary impulsive type purchases is setting aside some money right away. But I tie us back to the first item, which is be reasonable. Make sure that you know where your money's going, that there's room in the budget so that when you pay yourself first, there's also room left for all the other bills and items that are critical. But it's a guaranteed way to start building your savings. And if you build it in such a way, like I referenced with maybe automatic deposit, into a savings or other vehicle, it puts you in a position where you're automatically going to accumulate savings.
How about Walter? Another question here. How do you measure success for your client? I mean, they come in, they ask you some questions. You might be able to help them there. You might direct them to things, but do you kind of measure when that was a success and how?
It's based on what the client is looking to accomplish, and that's what I love about our service. It's not a program that has clients just checking boxes of success. Success can change, goals can change. So, um, and what we do is celebrate even the small wins, because financial coaching and revealing yourself to someone in, or your finances to someone, can be very, very embarrassing in some circumstances. So the first thing that I do is make sure that I let the client know that I appreciate them, and um, even taking the step to reach out for help and get financial coaching. That's step number one. And then as the goals and things that they set are accomplished, we celebrate those together, um, and not take it lightly.
And then when we're doing this, money goes in this pot and that pot, and some of it might be invested. Drew, when you're looking at that, are there investment benchmarks that you utilize to know whether you're doing it right, what your expectations should be as divvying that up?
Yeah, Rich, I'll focus that answer in terms of just everyday savings, right? We talked about making sure you're reverse engineering that future financial freedom. And so making sure that along that journey, you have various milestones that you want to reach. So, we referenced maybe financial freedom looks like to you being able to move out without a roommate, or as big as sending kids to college without debt. Well, you can back into those milestones along the way, Rich, and make sure that you're funding your savings in such a way that you're on pace to hitting those milestones. And if someone needs help in doing that sort of thing, we have professionals who can certainly help clients or the community in reverse engineering those items, and then also making sure those critical milestones are attained.
Walter, we're talking about financial freedom now, and for some people, it might start feeling like the pandemic's behind us. For others, they're still in the midst of it. There's different stages. But when we talk about financial freedom now, is that different in any context from where you sit, what you're hearing from people, than it was if we could roll back the clock 18 months ago to pre-pandemic?
Well, Rich, what I tell clients is, just because it's raining doesn't mean you have to drown. And the pandemic was a flood, and some people did not have the right things in place. But if that rainy day situation, if people didn't understand what that meant pre-pandemic, they do now. So there were some clients that I work with who did not have a good plan in place or any plan at all, and some were more prepared than others. But even the ones who thought that they were prepared, this pandemic just showed us things that we've never seen before. So it's about working those goals, reworking those goals, and just really continuing to build a plan that um, works for you. That 6 months at least of discretionary dollars in an account, and whether you start small or big, it's important to start, and that's what we're preaching right now.
Drew, this pandemic was pretty rough on a lot of people. Some people, they weathered it fairly well, but for the people that were rough on it, and I'm not minimizing that, there were a lot of extra efforts made by the government, whether it be the increased unemployment, longer unemployment, help with health care. Does this serve a warning sign, though, that your personal situation could go south at the time when the government isn't so focused on maybe extending some extra benefits, and how dangerous that could be to not have good financial health if say you lost a job, or something happened in your personal situation?
Yeah, Rich, I think it's a good point, and really, once again, highlights the importance of this sort of conversation. I like what Walter said. It's going to rain, right? Doesn't mean you have to drown. And I think that we can all learn from this experience. And regardless of where you find yourself, whether it was heavily impacted or not impacted at all, it's perhaps just an opportunity for us to all realize that events will come along that are completely and totally unplanned for. Like you can't know about them, and so it's important that you have that kind of plan built. and that you stick to some tried and true basics so that you can weather that storm. And so I think that regardless of where someone out there might find themselves, I think it's critical that they begin to dive in, build that plan, build that budget, make sure they know where every dollar is going, regardless of what their situation is today, so that they're ready to weather the next storm. And let's all hope as a society the storm won't be nearly as large as this most recent event. But regardless, what I can guarantee is that there will be storms, whether that's in your individual life or in the broader context. And being ready for those can start today. It can start by building that financial plan and by looking at your goals and making sure you understand what's going on with your budget. So it's going to rain. You don't have to drown. I like that, Walter. I'm stealing that.
That is a good line from Walter. A question came in. Now, you're both of you both offer services for people coming in. But Walter, could you speak about tips in finding the right partner for you on this? I mean, you being the client, whether it be coming to a place like you or deciding where to go out there. How does a person decide where to find the right fit for them and help on this stuff?
Just like anything else, I think the right coach or the right fit is the person who can get you moving, who can make you act, because this knowledge isn't new. What we teach in financial coaching is not new information, but the difference is the one who's going to be an advocate for you and the one who's going to get you to start using the information and doing something different in your life than you've been doing in the past. So whether it's myself or someone else. And what I also tell people is understand what your learning style is, whether you learn by doing or by seeing, because again, me just giving information to people and tip sheets and things like that, it may not fit your learning style. So understand how information is retained for yourself, whether it be using mobile apps, or some people like physical paper. There are different things within yourself that may make you, be more susceptible to working with a coach than another.
And time for one more question before we move on today. For Drew, in terms of your financial pie, and I mean the pie on how the money is spent, depending on how old someone is, maybe it's a little bit different. But these days, is there some parameters on X percentage for housing, X percentage for transportation? And it's probably going to be really unique to an individual, but is there like a starting point for people to think about how to divide that up if they're creating their budget?
Yeah, there's lots of great resources out there. And we even have some available to someone, but it would really be about sitting down and looking at someone's individualized budget. And there's definitely some tried and true kind of principles there. I'm not going to necessarily spout them out because they're so individualized as this conversation is. But I think what's important is that you dive in. Don't worry as much maybe about the percentages and letting that intimidate you, but start by doing something. Start by looking at where your money's going, and then compare them to resources that are out there that would suggest certain percentages and amounts of the pie for various things. But the thing you can start to do is figure out where every dollar's going. Start journaling. Start literally writing down where you're spending your money, and making sure you understand the purpose and value exchange of that. And then looking at the critical categories, and then you can compare and contrast, and there's a myriad of options there. But I think the key is that having a point of view on this, Rich. We can obsess ourselves and all the nuances of the math and the finance, and that's a place for people like me to live. But I think that what I'd want someone out there who's curious about these things is to first figure out where their money's going, have a really good view of where your money's going, why it's going there, are you paying yourself first, and then begin to get that budget down, and then we can help you compare and contrast that to various models that are out there. And there's all sorts of viewpoints on that. But I think what's important is that someone knows where their money's going. In other words, the whole pie, Rich, rather than the individual little slices.
Well, this is a great discussion. Thanks, Drew, for your time today, and Walter. Hopefully, there's a lot of good information rolled out of this. I think it was an exciting discussion, and we'll send it back to you, Eric.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. It was an awesome panel discussion. As a reminder, after the event, there are those expert sessions. So if you have more questions for Drew and Walter, you can get kind of into the weeds with them individually after the event. So let's jump into the next session. This one featuring Brian Bibble of LB or JL Smith Group. And Brian is a financial coach and accredited investment fiduciary. He's also a leading retirement and planning professional who assists with the estate and financial income planning. Brian has educated Northeast Ohio residents on personal finance and retirement planning strategies for many years. He works with successful professionals, business owners, and retirees who are concerned with building and maintaining financial security for themselves and their families. Brian, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Eric. Our session now is about retirement planning, and we have Brian Bibbo from the J&L Smith Group with offices in Avon and Fremont. Everybody wants to think about retirement. So what should people be doing when they're thinking about retirement, Brian?
Absolutely, Rich, and thanks for the opportunity. I mean, the number one thing is have a plan, right? You need to have a plan in place when it comes to retirement. And really, what does that mean? You want to start thinking of some of the broader concepts of like, look like for me. Or maybe I have an old pension from a previous employer, or the current employer has a frozen pension. What do I do there? What do taxes look like in retirement? Now, they're definitely going to be different from working. In addition, where do you take your money from? You know, are we going to a 401k first? Are we going to a Roth? Are we going to a brokerage account? Healthcare. Are we of 65 years of age where currently we can get Medicare? Or are we retiring prior to 65? Then you got to think of, hey, legacy planning between a husband and a wife. What's the surviving spouse going to do? And long-term care mitigation. So when I talk about, you know, having a plan, it's not making decisions in a silo. It's looking at that bigger overall picture, coordinating everything we just discussed in one financial plan. Because one of the biggest mistakes we can make is just going, hey, I looked at Social Security, I ran some numbers, and this is the way to get the most out of the system. Right, but could that affect, you know, your health care? Could that affect your taxes? Could that affect your investment planning and the growth on those other investments? Absolutely. So when we're really thinking about having a plan for retirement, it's starting to coordinate everything all together. Yes, you might have saved in a 401k all along the years or a retirement plan, but how are you going to use that to the best of your ability? As we can continue closer and closer to those retirement ages, should you be taking more risk or less risk? Chances are less, but coordinating everything together is going to be the main thing, Rich.
So to have a plan, you have to know what you have in that plan. It's like the very basic first thing, find out what it is. Whether you're coming into an expert like you or trying to self-plan, which may or may not be a smart thing, to kind of have it all in one folder or one place that I know I have this pension, I have this Social Security. I mean, is that step one?
Yeah, absolutely. Starting to organize what you have and gathering it. You know, one thing I traditionally see working with the public is, hey, I know I have this. It's out there somewhere, and I need to go get it, especially with like those frozen pensions, those kind of things. So, you know, the number one thing is going to be organization. Start organizing the tools in your retirement toolbox. Start gathering those things together. What do you have? How does it work? I see a lot of people, we haven't looked at Social Security in years. Well, you can go to ssa.gov and get your most recent statement. So start gathering things, looking at that 401k. What risk are you taking? That's going to be the number one thing, Rich. Absolutely.
In writing a finance column here at cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer, it seems like a common question always comes up. Oh, should I take that Social Security at 62, at 65, and 67? Of course, there's no one right answer there. But if someone is, let's just say someone chooses to retire ahead of 65 or 66, what's that range of answer that could affect them to go ahead and start the Social Security then versus maybe waiting later and not dipping into it? What type of factors?
Yeah, great questions on the Social Security. I mean, you look at it as 62, full retirement age, 70. If you pull it before your full retirement age, you can only earn $18,960 from a W-2 or self-employment job. So are you going to continue to work part-time is a big question. Also, How is that Social Security going to be taxed? Social Security is based off a thing called provisional income. So how much provisional income do you have hitting your tax return? And the next thing is like, do I need the money now versus later? I'll give you a rough estimate. The difference between age 62 and age 70 is on average somewhere between 11 to 12 years. What do I mean? That's the break-even point, 11 to 12 years after the age of 70. So you take 62 versus 70. Well, 62, you got checks for 8 years. And then at 70, you're getting a lot more in a check. So where do those start getting married and it's break-even? We're really looking at that between 80 to 82 age range. So you got to think about that. Longevity is a big thing when we think about Social Security. Also, I share with people, there's an aspect to this we can't control, the political aspect. You know, so before COVID hit 2034, the Social Security Trust Fund would be exhausted, where we're putting up a shortfall of $200 billion a year. It's a lot of money. And they said, hey, we'll start paying out 77 cents on the dollar. But we haven't gotten those updated numbers after this COVID pandemic hit, where a lot of people are unemployed, not paying into the system. So long story short is, and it really depends on everyone's situation, coordinating things together. But just knowing that general, it's like a 12-year, 10 to 12-year difference between the two strategies.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that range that you're looking at, because of course we could all make a wiser decision if we knew how long we were going to be around to collect the money. But generally speaking, and we're talking general here, if you're a relatively healthy person, you got good history of living long, you at least are optimistic you're going to make it well into your 80s or 90s. Does that mean you tend to, maybe that's to hold off on Social Security? Is not for everyone, but just as a general rule?
Yeah, great train of thought is like, do we wait on that Social Security because, hey, my health is real good, I have longevity in my family? I mean, that's a good consideration, but it's also what are we spending? You know, do we need that Social Security on a monthly basis? The biggest question I share with people is, yes, on paper, usually waiting until 70 makes the most sense. Get you the most money out of the system, you live a long life. However, if you retired at 62 and don't pull your Social Security to 70, what are you living off of those 8 years? Are you strictly pulling that money out of your retirement accounts and using your assets? Because if so, now we got to consider is what is the drawdown on your investments? In the long run, the compounding interest on your investments, will that do as well or better? Those are the other considerations we need to look at when we're thinking of Social Security, because a good amount of the time it actually tells you to consider pulling Social Security earlier. But again, everyone's situation is unique.
You used the term a little bit ago, provisional income, I believe, if I remember that right. What is that?
Yeah, great question. So provisional income is something that the IRS decided to think of how we're going to tax this whole thing called Social Security. So provisional income itself is a combination of every other income you have on your tax returns. And I do mean everything else: rental income, net rental income, dividends, whatever it may be. They take all the combination of those and half of your Social Security benefits. And the reality of it is, and I'll give you some rough numbers. If you are single, $25,000 plus of provisional income, Social Security will start getting taxed. If you're married, it's like $32,000 of provisional income, Social Security will start getting taxed. And when I talk about taxation of Social Security, it's on the federal tax return. The great state of Ohio does not tax our Social Security benefits.
You say start to get taxed, not all of your Social Security, a portion of it?
Yeah, so Social Security can be taxed a few $1,000s all the way up to 85% of your benefit to be taxed. And I'm going to give you an example because we go down a path where it gets very confusing. If my Social Security benefit was $20,000 a year and my provisional income made 85% of it taxable, well, $20,000 it was, but 17 grand is taxable at my tax rate. I'm not saying an 85% tax. What I'm saying is 85% of that 20,000, 17 grand comes across taxable on the tax return.
So the other question I often get hear from people is, okay, we have Social Security, we have pensions. You know, when I started in the working career, everybody just had pensions. So you just looked at one thing. So we were building up a certain amount of money. Is there a rule of thumb that if you want that money to reasonably guess it's going to last your lifetime, that you take out every year? Let's just say someone has, just for the sake of a round figure, let's say they have a $500,000. Do they take out 4% every year, 5% a year? We can't predict for sure what the market's going to be in the future, but what's the, like the recommendation on that?
Yeah, great question. Obviously, it depends on the spending needs and what do you have in consistent income from Social Security pension. But I'm very worried about the 4% rule. There's a lot of articles out there that says the 4% rule is dead. And here's what the crux of that is if the market takes a crash early in your retirement, all of a sudden the market's down 20, 30, 40, 50%, something crazy, and you're still pulling money out of your investment accounts, are you ever going to get back to even? Because you hear about market return. That's what I just shared with you. Market going up, market going down. You hear about interest rates, right? What's going on with interest rates? But the one we really don't hear about is sequence of returns risk. It's when the market's going to give us the good years and when it's going to give us the bad. We can't control those. But what we know is if we're taking out 4% and we're crashing for 3 or 4 years like we did in 2008, 2009, you know what? That 4% rule ain't going to work out, and you have the of running out of money. So it's more about segmenting out your money. As we talk about the plan, we have a now, soon, later bucket, like you see over here on the screen. But that now bucket is kind of your safe and liquid money. Money we keep. Soon bucket here in the middle is what you see, as I call it, the first phase of retirement. This should be conservatively invested and meant for income. So if the market does take plus years of income, the next thing down the line is your later bucket to invest for the later term here. What the goal is to mitigate one of those crashes up front in your retirement, and you're off of more conservative investments than, hey, 100% stock portfolio, 64, whatever it may be. That's the goal, to try to avoid those big things, those percent, yes, but also inflation. What does inflation look like? There's a lot of considerations.
All right, let's bring Rich and Brian to the stage to do a couple quick questions, and then we'll get on to the next panel.
Thanks a lot, Eric. We have a guest later on, Bernie Kosar, and he grew up in Youngstown and, of course, played football for the Browns. I bet if you went to a Youngstown bar, you could find a heated argument about whether you were Browns or Steelers fan. So I'm thinking in terms of retirement planning, let's say those people in the bar weren't talking about football and they were trying to say Roth IRA, 401k, what's better? Let's set that aside for a minute, but let's talk about, if you have both, the types of flexibility. Could you address the flexibility that gives you on choosing your tax bracket as you pull that money out in retirement?
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell people to have a little bit of both. You want to have a healthy bucket of pre-tax money and a healthy bucket of after-tax money, or your Roth money. Reason being that is because you can start controlling your tax brackets in retirement. When tax rates are high because the administration has raised them, you want to take the money out of the Roth. When tax brackets are low, you want to take it out the traditional IRA, the traditional 401k, and pay the taxes on them. So it depends where the tax rates are, but having both of them helps you control your taxes. As we talked about before, Rich, that provisional income on Social Security, it could also help make that Social Security not taxable or less taxable by controlling your income with the Roths or the pre-tax.
Another thing you touched on, Brian, you mentioned about weathering through the ups and downs of the market. I happen to think, as I was listening to you speak about that today, there's a lot of concern out there right now about inflation, whether inflation is going to take off. Can you speak to the concern people have to keep in mind in their retirement planning, not knowing what inflation is going to be 10 years, 15, 20 years from now?
Yeah, general rule of thumb is using 2.5% in your retirement plan. And we can debate all day. Has healthcare over the last decade been a lot higher than 2.5%? Yes. In the last year, have groceries jumped through the roof? Well, it definitely feels like it. But I would tell people 2.5% is realistic. If you want to use a higher number, 3% will work in the retirement plans. Typically, we're using that 2.5% when we think of inflation. You want to make sure your dollars today hold the same purchasing power into the future. It's amazing to see. It's like, hey, if you're 10 years out from retirement and your budget is 60 grand, that's going to balloon in 10 years to 80, 85,000, somewhere in that ballpark, just because of inflation. Think of a house. What did it cost in the 80s? Maybe it was a $200,000 house in the 80s, which is a very nice house, would cost you about 500,000 plus in today's dollars.
Boy, Brian, I thought we were just going to scratch the surface today, but boy, you packed in tons of information in a short period of time. Thanks so much for your time today. I hope everybody got something out of this discussion. We'll send it back. We'll send it back to Eric now. I'm sorry, Brian.
Thanks, Rich. Thank you, Brian. And let's move on to our next panel discussion. We have Melissa Smith, Brian Cantrell, Gregory Peralcato, and they are discussing your dreams and making them a reality. So Melissa B. Smith serves as the Vice President of Liberty Home Mortgage, one of the fastest growing mortgage lenders in the United States. Melissa began her professional career working in the U.S. Army, where she learned key leadership skills that have helped elevate her in her career. Brian Cantrell is a realtor and vice president of Chestnut Hill Realty. Out of college, Brian began his career as a design engineer and can offer that designer's eye to his clients before they make a decision on renovations or what home to purchase. Brian doesn't consider himself just a realtor. He's a real estate advisor, one who builds trust first versus telling clients to work with him on blind faith. Gregory, we'll go with Gregory, is the Executive Vice President of Lending for CH Housing Capital, the lending arm of CH Housing Partners. Greg has over 30 years of success across the banking and financial services industries. Throughout his career, Greg has held various sales and operational leadership roles, and I want to welcome all of them and throw it back to Rich. Rich?
Thanks much, Eric. Making your home dreams a reality. What a great topic that is. And we've got a great group of experts here today to talk about that. From one of the fastest growing mortgage lenders in the country, Liberty Home Mortgage, we have Melissa Smith to talk about the keys to the loan process. From CHN Housing, Greg Peralca is joining us to talk about the many ways home buyers might be able to make. And no discussion on this is complete about home buying unless we talk to a realtor. And for that, Chestnut Hill's Brian Cantrell is on board. And then after our discussion here today, there'll be an opportunity to answer some of your questions. Feel free to put them in the chat room in this. And we'll also have an expert panel open discussion later today. So let's get to it. Brian, the market has been crazy lately with the low interest rates and high demand. Tell us what's going on out there and what the buyer should expect.
Sure. Thank you, Rich. That's a great question. And I'll start by giving you just sort of a 10,000 foot view of this. You know, there's the supply side and the demand side. And on the demand side, you had a lot of people living in rentals, for example, in downtown Cleveland, where you got bars, restaurants, music venues, all kinds of entertainment, living in brand new buildings with gyms and rooftop bars and all of this stuff that makes living downtown and living in a rental quite comfortable. Well, COVID hits and everything closes down, and now your apartment's really small and you're spending all this time in it. So you start to think, how can I be more comfortable? I think I'm going to look for a house. So you've got a lot of people coming out of rentals that it's either they're too afraid to even share an elevator with somebody, let alone share the grill on the rooftop deck. So they start looking for space where they can have a home office and a yard and really control their environment a little bit more. So the demand has picked up not only from that demographic, but you also have additionally people that were given the flexibility from out of state to work from anywhere in the country, and they've got family here. So they say, now's the time. I can keep my job and I can move back to low cost of living Cleveland. And those are additional buyers entering the market. Now, on the flip side, at the same exact time as that demand is increasing, you have sellers who are comfortable enough in their own home, and they really don't want to let strangers come through and touch all of their house and put their family at risk of catching COVID. So they don't want to, open their house up and risk that. On top of that, they probably have a spare bedroom they can make their home office. And the uncertainty of this COVID, they're not sure, are we going back to the office after this is over? Do I need to really buy a bigger house with a dedicated home office? I'm just going to wait it out and sit on the sidelines. So throughout last year, you had dwindling supply at the same time you had increasing demand, where more and more people said this is untenable. So those two collide, and you've got currently this spring a market unlike anything Cleveland has seen in at least 4 decades, where if you list your house at the same price you would have listed it for 2 years ago, and 2 years ago it had taken 3 months and you would have gotten 90% of asking, now you list it for that same price, within 5 days you're going to have a dozen, maybe 2 dozen offers, all at asking or above. They're gonna, many of them will waive the inspection, waive the appraisal, maybe be cash. And if the seller says, hey, you know what, I wanna stay in my house until July 1st, great. All the buyers will say, we'll close July 1st then, and to appease the seller. So it's as strong a seller's market as we've ever seen in Cleveland. And you know, the underlying theme is that people frankly just value their homes more today than they did 2 years ago.
So with all this, I'm sorry. So with all this going on, we probably have a good number of the potential buyers are falling into 2 groups. Somebody that bought before but didn't buy before in a market like this. We got people probably buying for the first time. So I was curious from a mortgage perspective, Melissa, what does this mean for prospective buyers coming to places like Liberty Home Mortgage?
So what that means for prospective buyers is they have to have a very, very aggressive offer. With there being such low supply, these buyers are looking for conventional offers or cash buyers. So, you know, a lot of the government loans they're having a difficult time getting those offers accepted. So that means that you have to have a stronger credit profile. You need to have more assets in the bank. Your income needs to be solid. So it's making it much, much more difficult for our borrowers that typically could just walk in with an FHA approval and they would have no issues getting that contract accepted. So people have to work much harder. They need to reach out to a lender and, you know, have their credit evaluated, find out what their options are, see what they need to do as far as, you know, accumulating those assets to make sure that they have what they need to get that approval, making sure their credit score is where it needs to be. It's making it extremely difficult. We're actually seeing, you know, a decrease in production just because people don't qualify for these types of loans. And there's so many people that are accepting cash offers that we're just not seeing the business come in. It's
interesting.
Yes.
So we got that, folks, if you're receiving some cash offers, and then there's other folks that get through the normal process, but other people probably feel like they can afford a home, want a home, but maybe they don't check all the boxes normally. I guess that's where Greg over at CHN, you guys are able to provide some help for those people, kind of fill in the gaps where maybe they don't check all the boxes to still be able to get in that home. Can you talk about what you guys are able to offer, or the types of things that are out there for people that fall in that situation?
Yeah, thanks, Rich. Definitely. We, for those that don't know, we've been around since 2000. Company, CHN Housing Partners, who is in their, and they have, we've been a non-profit who was founded by 6 Cleveland community development corporations to improve housing stability within our community. So we've always been an affordable housing developer as well as a housing services provider, and now we're a residential mortgage lender as well. So we serve more than 40,000 people annually, and we now also do that business in adjacent states, but Cleveland is still at the heart of our mission. And we believe home ownership should be within reach for each family. So the one main reasons why we started CHN Housing Capital was to provide access to capital for communities of color and low to moderate income home buyers, and home buyers within those low to moderate income communities in Cuyahoga County. And as a lender, we have products for both current homeowners and those in the market purchasing for the very first time who are trying to obtain their dream home. So this lending arm supports CHN Housing's, our partners' mission to leverage the power of affordable housing to change lives and improve communities through first mortgages, down payment assistance programs, as well as home repair loans. So those who may think that they can't own a home for whatever reason, or have been turned down for their credit score or lack of down payment, should contact us to discuss their options, because we look at the whole borrower profile, and it's not necessarily just the credit score. We want to understand the story behind the individual, and we are striving to fill the homeownership gap for individuals who are being left out of the housing market and or who believe they're unable to reach their dream of homeownership. So we look at homeowners that are currently homeowners as well as those looking to purchase for the very first time. And so we have products that range from our home improvement or home repair loans through Cuyahoga County all the way to a first mortgage program for small dollar loans. And then in between that, we have down payment assistance programs that you can even piggyback with Melissa's first mortgage at Liberty Home Mortgage, where we are working with the city of Cleveland as well as Cuyahoga home buyers. So again, we're trying to fill that gap to be able to show individuals that housing is affordable to be able to purchase as well.
What I'm hearing is, though, that it's tougher than ever because it's competitive. And Melissa mentioned cash buyers maybe being more favorable than somebody who has to go through a process. You have these programs. So Melissa, what can the person do that isn't ready to have all that cash to put down? Are there things that they can do so that when they find that home they like, they have more of a chance to execute it through a place like yours, or maybe in conjunction with some of the programs that Greg's CHN has to offer? How do they get in the game?
The down payment assistance programs are extremely helpful. We work with down payment assistance programs all the time. It's just a wonderful opportunity for someone to get some additional cash that they haven't been able to save on their own. The other option that a lot of people don't take into consideration is that you can, if you've got a strong enough credit profile going into the transaction, that you can receive gift funds from an employer, from a family member, from someone that you have a close family-like relationship with, to kind of build up those funds to get the down payment where you need it to be. So that's another great option for them.
Greg, do you need to hear from these people in this market before they've even found that home that they like, so they kind of line up all the ducks in a row?
Yeah, great question, Rich. We potential home buyer and advise them of going through a home ownership counseling course that's approved by a HUD-approved agency. CHN Housing Partners, we also offer that course twice a month through Zoom right now, and it's well attended. There's other opportunities throughout Greater Cleveland, so you really have to have that certificate of home ownership classes in hand. What is nice now is that the county has actually worked with us where it used to be that you had to have that certificate before you could sign your purchase agreement, and now they've actually waived that to an at-close condition. So we can actually apply for the loan, and this is great for Brian and the realtors, right? Because of the fact that now they don't have to have that before signing that purchase agreement. They can go through the entire process of home ownership and just have that certificate available at the time of closing. So we definitely would like to speak to them and be able to arrange with the first mortgage lender what their guidelines are, as well as we're providing the down payment assistance program.
One thing I find interesting about this market, I've heard anecdotally, and Brian brought it up too, about how quickly homes are going for asking right away when they get on the market. And I guess, Brian, could you address, does that mean that they're not being priced right? Should they be priced higher? Or is that a balance between pricing them at a sale price that will also pass a appraisal, or the appraisal's not keeping up with it? Or, you know, what's causing the homes not to even go for a higher price if there's that much demand out there?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rich. Yeah, it's a tough thing because really these prices, they're getting record prices. So you know, even if you took something that sold in December of last year and the house next door that's identical to it is listed today, I would say, let's say the house sold for $220 in December, and my client lists the next door one identical for $220 today, it's going to get above, 10% above that today. The market is moving so quickly that, not to say there aren't houses that I see them, the way I mark them is, this is a make me move price. The seller's saying, I don't really want to sell, but you pay me $450,000, yeah, I'll sell my 150,000 over market. There's no way he'll get that. And usually those are the ones that drop in price. But the majority, if they're listed fairly, anywhere within 10 to 15% of what other homes in that neighborhood have sold for, I'd say they're gonna have offers within the first week.
But are you saying, let's just say hypothetically, a home is listed at 250, and you have three buyers that show up there in the first couple of days of listings putting offers down on it? Should that home have been listed higher, or if it had been listed higher, it would have had 0 offers? So really, it is listed right. It's just a matter they filled that niche to get in there.
Yeah, I would say it's listed correctly. The way I advise my sellers is that we want to list it at fair market, and then the market will tell us what it's worth. If they say, it's 10% over, then we'll get an offer 10% over. If not, and we get asking price, then that's what it is. But the market is great right now because it's very. I mean, you don't have to wait long before you get your answer.
Mm-hmm. Now, Melissa, and maybe, I don't know about at Liberty whether you ran into this, but anecdotally, I heard a lot of cases years ago after the housing crunch where deals would be made. And then I know that you guys are kind of divorced from the appraisal process now, but then the appraisal comes in and doesn't justify it. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm overstating that. Is that pretty much out the window now if it did happen before?
So what we're seeing right now is, we're not involved in ordering the appraisals, but we review them, we receive them, we pull reports on those appraisals. And what we're seeing right now, more than I've ever seen before, is they're coming back flagged for value. So what we're having to do is go have another appraiser take a second level look at that appraisal to see if they think that the value is supported. In some cases, I can try to look at those and decide, if it's a house that happens to be on Lake Erie and all the homes that are being compared to it in the reports are not right on the lake, obviously values probably supported, so we can waive those types of things. But for the most part, we're seeing, we get a list from a system called Collateral Underwriter that gives us, 20 different comparable homes in the area. And they go back sometimes a year. And to Brian's point is that the same house could have sold for 50 grand less last year, right next door. So what we're seeing is there's homes within the same neighborhoods that sold within the last 8 months that are not anywhere near the value that we're trying to get right now. So being lenders, it is very tricky to try to make sure that the values are accurate. And it's going to take some time for those appraised values to catch up to this market. And that's a really, really big struggle for us. I saw a home last week. The appraised value came in flagged for value. We requested a second level review, and the value came in $40,000 less than what the original appraisal came in at. So that's alarming. That's alarming.
Greg, I'm sorry, Greg, you deal with a lot of people that maybe they don't have that 30 or 40% down. You're dealing with the people that help fill in the gaps. Are there cautions? If someone listening is in that category where they might need to come to you for help, are there also some cautions about getting into a market when prices are going up so fast, or is that not so?
Well, because of the fact that we're able to fill in some of those gaps with the first time home down payment as low as 3%, Rich. So that's helpful in regards, and also with no PMI. So you're not having that cost. And we currently have a relationship with a correspondent lender that's able to hold on to that paper today. So they are portfolioing that particular product and keeping it for their servicing. So that allows that type of borrower to have such a low down payment that it's not necessarily the risk that we heard, both Melissa and Brian talk about, because of the fact that they're able to put that 3% down. And that's definitely something that enables them to get into a home when maybe in the past they couldn't, with a typical 5% down or 10% down to 20% down, where maybe there was PMI, right, before the 20% down. but this is just a great option for these first-time home buyers and individuals within those communities that, really where there are some competitive type of pricing, for homes, that they can really have an opportunity to realize their dream of home ownership.
It's interesting you bring up PMI. I guess I looked at PMI years ago when I bought my house, that was not insurance for me. That was insurance for the lender, but I was paying the premium for it. How does that work that you can have, as low as 3% down, not PMI anymore? Who's taking on the risk there? And is that new programs that didn't exist before?
Sure. So they are newer type of programs that you see, and the lender is taking on the initial risk behind that. And that's why the lender is able to insure against it. They also will keep it on their books, as I stated, within their portfolio for a number of years until they're able actually to sell it into the secondary market with investors. So they might have to hold on to that paper for 3 to 5 years before there's actually equity within that loan. And so some will decide to hold on to it longer because maybe there's other benefits behind that. They're getting the CRA credit, if you will, for actually lending for low to moderate income communities or borrowers. And then some will just put it into a pool and be able to sell it to investors within, that's maybe Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac approved. So there's different ways that banks or lenders will approach that in regards to the margins that are actually available, for them at that time.
I want to remind our viewers that after our discussion here, there's going to be a Q&A session briefly. You're free to post your questions in the chat box so we can get back to some of them. And then later today, we're going to have a more lengthy opportunity to interact with all the experts as part of our panel, this panel and other panels today as part of the program. We're starting to get close to winding down, and I've been spending an awful lot of time asking the questions. And sometimes when I'm asking the questions, we miss the most interesting stuff. So I thought maybe it would be interesting if we all kind of went around at least one more time here. Things that I didn't bring up or things where you maybe thought of later that should be added to the discussion. I'll throw it out there for whoever may be ready to go first here, and then we can go from there. What didn't we touch on yet that we should? Oh, I threw you off here, huh?
Yeah, let's see. There was a couple of comments that Melissa and Greg touched on. Oh, I was going to mention, with the putting in the offers and whether you should prepare ahead of time and have a conversation with Greg or Melissa before, you start home searching. I believe that's very important because, like I said, if it's priced fairly, it's probably going to have some offers within 3 days and probably be under contract within a week. So you have a very short window in which to see the house, think on it, sleep on it, and put in an offer. And, if it is your dream house, you got to have your ducks in a row. And the main thing to think about is when you put the hat on the seller's side, they don't want to go under contract now with a buyer. 30, 60 days later, it falls apart and they have to put it back on the market. So what they're looking for is a buyer that gives them confidence. And that's what the conversation with Greg and Melissa will do is they've got good credit, they've got pre-approved, they've got their ducks lined up. They're not going to fall out of this for lack of financial, not follow through. So that's very important, and it's valuable to have those conversations before you really start seriously seeing homes and shopping.
Yeah, and honestly, with the appraised values coming in light, I think a lot of customers are, they're dealing with buyers that are very concerned that they're getting over asking price. So does this borrower have the funds to pay the difference if the value doesn't come in where it's needed? There might be an additional $15,000 or $20,000 that's required for closing. So, all the borrowers that are out there that have an FHA or VA, any kind of government approval, should really go back and talk to their lender and see if they have the ability to switch over to a conventional pre-approval, because sellers, for whatever reason, I agree and disagree to some respects, but a lot of sellers believe that a conventional buyer has more flexibility as far as their income to get financing. So right now, what we are seeing is conventional offers are the way to go.
Greg, anything from your end that we didn't
Yeah, I
get
would
to
just
yet?
add, Rich, I think even Melissa and I were touching a little bit about down payment assistance. And I think it's important that even as we stated, those that think that they can't afford home ownership today, right? Or that they just don't think they have the credit profile or down payment, it is important myself in regards to what does that look like for them, right? Because home ownership is very affordable. I think that's been a myth out there for some time that individuals just don't think that they can do it, right? That they have to rent, and they're not building equity within their home. And so it's something that they definitely should look into. And even when we talk about these down payment assistance programs, if you even go to our website at chnhousingcapital.org, you can see which communities are participating within those down payment assistance programs. And then while you're talking to Melissa about the first mortgage program, she can simultaneously work with you in regards to the down payment assistance. And so to be able to get one of our down payment assistance with the city of Cleveland, it's $20,000 in the Glenville Circle North community for rehabs as well as new constructions. And then with the Cuyahoga County, we're also talking about $13,395 of free money, up to, for a purchase price that's right around $133,950. So again, there's all these available monies that are out there, and I just think that our homeowners or potential homeowners don't really know about that, right? Or haven't researched it, or don't know where to look for it. And I think it's great that we're able to talk about today in this forum to be able to make those monies available.
With the money that's available and so forth, are you guys finding that it's not unusual for, say, a first-time home buyer buying that first home that their payment, even with taxes, is lower than what they've been paying in rent? Do you guys come across that?
Yes.
All the time.
Yeah. Yes.
All
And
the
I
time.
think that a lot of people will be surprised if they haven't started to think about the cost of the home yet, right?
Correct.
And I'd say in Cleveland, there's almost no community where it's better to rent than to buy. I mean, there's certain cities in the country, yeah, it's more financially advantageous to rent, but not Cleveland, not for a long time.
We've had a lot of great information today, but maybe that's the best piece of information for that new home buyer. They might not realize if they've been paying rent all these years, they could build up some equity, build up an investment, and actually lower what they're paying out of the pocket each month on their home purchase versus renting.
All right, so let's bring them all back up. Greg Peralka, Brian Cantrell, and Melissa Smith. They will answer a couple questions before we jump out of here. So, Rich, I will toss it over to you. And welcome, Greg and Melissa and Brian.
Thanks, everybody. Time's a little tight here, but we do want to follow up with a few questions. One thing, with the interest rates so low now, the gap's probably never been tighter between a 15-year mortgage and a 30-year mortgage on interest rates, Melissa. So my question is this: if a person does think they want to go 15-year, and that gap is so tight, does it make sense to go ahead and take that 30-year if it's slightly higher interest to give them some insurance down the road if maybe they don't want to aren't able to continue pay that, or would that be bad theory to go that route? Just so you have a fallback for a lower payment is what I was asking.
Yeah, there's really no right or wrong answer to that question. I just think you have to know yourself. You don't want to get yourself strapped into a 15-year payment that's a little bit too high or put you in a bad spot. You know, if your furnace breaks down or God forbid something goes wrong with your home, you want to make sure that you can afford whatever repairs could potentially come up. The last thing you want to do is default on your home loan. So, you know, you can always make additional payments towards your principal balance if that's the goal, to pay off your loan quicker. You could always refinance down the road. But unless you're completely comfortable with that 15-year payment, I recommend going with the 30-year. I think that it's safer.
That's what I was wondering. Even if you were comfortable with the 15-year and you paid it, but you had the option to lower it if things went south for whatever reason, or you had another place to put your money.
Yeah, it just gives you more flexibility.
But Greg, a question came in from one of the viewers is that, you know, with these high rising property values or home sale prices, and different counties are on different cycles on their reappraisal, should there be concern that a home buyer would have that their taxes are going to be a lot more once the sale goes through, once the appraisal is updated, than what they're looking at now on their budget and making that purchase decision?
Sure, it's an intuitive question, especially with today's market. With a lot of the property taxes, though, what we realize is you're talking to lenders like myself or to Melissa's shop. We'll be able to help you really guide through those particular property taxes and whether or not those costs, right, and your overall PITI for your whole principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and whether or not you would qualify for that loan. So sure, it could increase in regards to the different markets and what we're seeing in selling prices. But if you're going to a reputable lender, they'll be able to help you to see if you really do qualify for that particular mortgage before you can apply. Making sure that you have all your ducks in a row. And even as we heard Brian talk about, because of how hot of a market this is, you definitely want to do your initial research with that lender before you're talking to that particular realtor about that home or that property or that particular place that you're looking to shop.
And Brian, we'll let you back clean up here today as we wrap up this discussion. I mean, you're a realtor, you're a real estate advisor, or at least advisor to buyers and sellers. Different market, different times than we probably could have ever imagined in recent times. What are some of your final thoughts that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, one thing, I talk to my buyers a lot about is, even though this is an unprecedented market, I like them to approach it the way they approached it in years past, where, don't jump into a home just because everybody else wants it. You always want what you can't have, well, if you got 30 offers on a house, you go, oh man, I really want this one. But if you really step back, you go, you know what, I don't love it. For me, I want my buyers to love the house. And it may take us still 3 months in this market to find it. The inventory is really low. So to me, don't get caught up emotionally in that I want to win this bidding war. I got to win, because if you don't love it, you're not going to end up winning 5 years down the road when you go to sell it and when you're living in it, So yeah, I think in the end, just let your heart guide you still the way it has in years past, and try not to get too emotionally caught up in this.
Great advice, Brian. Thanks so much, Brian. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Melissa. I hope that all our viewers got a little bit out of this discussion today. Certainly a lot of good information. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you, Rich. This was amazing. So a big thank you to all of our panelists, and a big thank you to you for asking some amazing questions. As a reminder, after this is over, there's the expert sessions, which you will see the session button on the Hopin that you're using. You can go to the session that you want to and dive deeper if you want to know more about building your dreams, getting into the housing market, whatever you want to do. You can jump into those sessions immediately following this. So I am super excited to introduce our last speaker of today's session. I don't know why I need to introduce Bernie Kosar, because you all know him, but we will do that. He is a man who doesn't need an introduction. As a former NFL quarterback, he played for the Cleveland Browns from 85 to 93, and then finished his career with the Miami Dolphins and then the Dallas Cowboys, respectively. He won a Super Bowl, and nowadays you can find him co-hosting the Browns Daily Show with the Cleveland Browns, and the really big show, his own podcast, Bernie's World, that's with ESPN, and also The Journey with Bernie. So it is my absolute honor to bring to you Mr. Bernie Kosar. At this point in the program, it's time to welcome to the stage Mr. Bernie Kosar, an absolute legend. So I will not read you his resume, but what I will tell you is he has a new podcast, Journey with Bernie, and if you love Bernie, you will love this podcast. Bernie, welcome to Navigating Finances, and I must say, my friend, you look absolutely amazing. How are you?
Thank you. Honored and humbled, Eric, to be with you here today. As a guy who's trending into his late 50s now and coming off of 35 surgeries and 75-ish broken bones, way more concussions and seizures than I probably care to admit to, and the ability to sit here, be healthy, and actually probably with behind me here, seeing the brain scans. Those are actually my brains. So some people have joked with me and said said that I didn't have one. So just to confirm it, I made sure we put them up there today. But in the seriousness of it, this virus over the last 18 months, we've had so many issues within society, even before this virus, with mental illness and abuse, and some of the issues that are going on, suicide rates in our country. In the NFL, you've been hearing a lot about the concussion settlements, some of those issues that go on there, and the brain research and how to keep yourself healthy from a natural holistic standpoint is easier said than done. And me and you were talking a little bit earlier about, again, after 35 surgeries, how do you keep yourself healthy? How do you keep yourself in shape? How do you age out gracefully? That in itself is hard enough in a regular times. Now you add this COVID virus on top of it, and this somewhat new normal that we're all having to adjust to. I'm very blessed and fortunate that I came across some Rick Spinagle and the Spinagle Wellness Institute 8 years ago, when I realized in some of these issues that were happening within my head and within some of the injuries that I had suffered. So to be able to sit here today, feeling healthy, feeling good, losing 80 pounds, being able to articulate phrases, to be able, again, to have been diagnosed with 5 years left of cognitive brain functions 4 years ago, and to not even to be able to have said cognitive brain functions 4 years ago, and to be able to remember that was 4 years ago here today. It's really been a true blessing for myself. And now the ability, coming out of this virus and feeling comfortable with some of the things that have been going on with myself and with the research, being able to start talking about this for some other people to help bring some help and relief and for them.
Bernie, that's amazing. And like I said, it's an honor to have you here today. We're going to start with the podcast, Journey with Bernie. And in that first episode, you refer to your, quote, poor negotiating skills. So I want to start by talking about financial education. It's something in our culture that we don't really celebrate at all, but should. And so I'd love to get your thoughts on how financial education or financial literacy could be something that we celebrate in the same way that, let's say, we celebrate the latest TikTok trend.
Financial education, as a boy who grew up in Northeastern Ohio in the 70s and 80s up here, and in the height of the manufacturing days, when the steel mills were at their peaks, they really started evolving and changing and sadly dissipating during that time frame. So in the 70s and 80s, when jobs were scarce, money was scarce, education was not even really an option for most people. You weren't really sure how you were going to better yourself, better your family in that. So really without the steel manufacturing jobs in our community in Northeastern Ohio, education was really the main thing that my father and my family really emphasized with me. Now, when you didn't have a job and you weren't able to maybe get to college, sports was an awesome vehicle to help continue your education like that. And studying the business aspect of it absolutely gives you, like in life, a core foundation that's so needed. But like you used the analogy with TikTok, it's maybe not as cool, it's not as popular, it's not as in front of you like TikTok is in front of social media. So people don't tend to migrate as quickly to it. But for the people out there listening and listening to us today, it may not appear as cool nor trendy in the short run. But as you age out, that core foundation, that fundamental knowledge that you're able to acquire with your business education is well worth the time.
I couldn't agree more, Bernie. And so that leads me to my next question about financial literacy, financial education, and then financial freedom. How much do you think those three things working together can help a household be insulated from some of the global events that are happening right now?
One of the things that the business education, the financial education absolutely could help insulate you is by giving you the core knowledge and more foundational knowledge that we were just talking about of first just understanding what the issues are. If you have a problem, if you have a situation and you don't really understand what the rules are, what the situation is, what the content of everything is around you, making astute decisions, choosing the right pathways are almost impossible. So if you don't have the knowledge base, if you don't have the education, if you don't have the experience from the beginning, it's almost going to be impossible to come out with the right outcome at the end if you don't go into it from the right starting point. So having that knowledge, having that foundational understanding and data within you absolutely gives you at least the chance to get started to help weather yourself from some of these global pandemics or global situations that are going on that tend to happen in life.
Now, Bernie, you were in the early stages of what economists would come to call the sudden wealth effect, this idea that you get a whole bunch of money all at once and the difficulty in managing that. And in the last 6 months, we've seen a number of global, what I'll call sudden wealth effect events. So you've got the GameStop stock or cryptocurrency, anything in that universe. And I'm wondering your thoughts on how a household or an individual could manage their money through those events instead of letting the money manage them.
The sudden wealth effects, there's quite a few points you could go into with that. You asked in the first question about my poor negotiating techniques or skills that I use. For the business people out there, for the people that are listening to this straight from the business perspective, probably should do as I say, not as I did. But from that perspective of it, I knew sometimes in business, you want to play your cards close to your vest. You don't want to give up sometimes what you're thinking or what you want. And you have to be prepared in business to walk away from a deal. You don't want to let the emotions take over. In my life, sometimes I will admit I will let the emotions take over, and I proudly do that. And if I, like coming out of college, like we were talking about when negotiating my Browns contract, I did do poor negotiating because I didn't play off the other teams against each other, the other business people that were offering me contracts, because I solely just wanted to play for the Cleveland Browns and come back. When you talk about the sudden wealth component of it, though, to the original question of and I find the GameStop and the cryptocurrencies things completely fascinating. And actually, although yes, both like athletes, sudden wealth, quick wealth type of situations, I find them a lot different. Like to the cryptocurrencies that are going out there, that's a real interesting world of asset-based stuff in the world that's actually going to have real assets and energy behind that. The GameStops and that type of sudden wealth and the way that was done, my hat's off to some of the young kids and the millennials. And as an older man, when I was younger, I used to look up to a lot of the old guys and say, God, I can't wait to be them. They're so wise. They know everything. I'm going to learn so much from them. I wanted to tip my hat and do a little namaste to some of the younger kids out there and their gifts and skills and wisdom. So like the sudden wealth that was so creative with GameStop, you know, to see kind of a poor stock like GameStop was out there, and to have smart kids like that see that the short interest is 140% of out there, and that there's not enough stock out there to even buy it back because they sold more shares outstanding that were even in play. That's to me, hats off to be able to get the bigger player, the hedge fund guys who have gone years with those type of games, and then to see the kids like that that are able to use data and able to use information and acquire and study it and be able to turn that into a move like that was absolutely impressive.
Bernie, as we're wrapping this up, I want to end on this question. That question is this: what is the most important money lesson you've learned that you want to share with the audience today?
Biggest money lessons that I wanted to maybe relay over to you, that I think it's taken me a while to learn. And I think I've known it, but I'm not sure I learned it. And I absolutely not sure I implemented it. But the ability, you know, to listen and to register what's being said. When you're able to, we all sometimes want to talk all the time. We want to show you how smart we are. We want to, and we don't really get into learning from the people we're talking to, listening to people wiser than us. And one of the things that I really find that's been something that's led to success, or it has helped me not maybe incur a lot of extra headaches in the personal life or the business life, is really a simple point of I look at is the who. You know, who am I with? Who am I talking to today? You know, who do I partner with? Who do I associate with? You know, if you're with the wrong who, if you have the wrong spouse, if you have the wrong business partner, if you have the wrong friend, the statistical chance that it's going to turn out to be a successful, fun relationship or business is drastically reduced. So if you're with the right who, if you're with the right people, you exponentially, I really believe, increase your chance and happiness. Who are you hanging out with? Who do you associate with? Who do you partner with?
Dude, that was awesome. I love that. I hope you have an amazing week, and thank you so much for your time today. I hope you guys enjoyed that and had an amazing time today. But before I go, I want to say another huge thank you to our gold sponsors: Chestnut Hill Realty Incorporated, Liberty Home Mortgage Corporation, PNC, and the J.L. Smith Group. And to our supporting sponsors, CHN Housing Capital, Morgan Stanley, and Weltman. A quick reminder, the sessions are beginning right now. If you look on the left-hand side of your screen, you will see the glowing sessions. You can jump in there and start with our expert sessions, as well as jump into the expo portion of Hopin, where you can learn more about our sponsors and figure out what sort of resources you need to navigate through your own finances. As always, my friends, it has been an absolute pleasure. Have a wonderful evening. We will see you next time for cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. I am Eric Hulkran. Have a wonderful evening.